It's fun to dunk on the insanity that was WCW at times, and trust us, we've dunked on them as much as anyone, but it's also nice to reminisce about some of World Championship Wrestling's better moments. WCW presented its fair share of iconic moments during its peak, but there are other things that happened on WCW television that were otherwise awesome, unpredictable, or historically significant that perhaps don't get their due. Let's get ready to reminisce! Because I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 massively underrated WCW moments. Join us. Number 10, he moves in mysterious ways. One of the highlights of any WCW card during the Monday Night Wars was the cutting-edge action provided by the roster of talented cruiserweights, chief among them Rey Mysterio Jr. Despite being undersized for the era, the Masked Man quickly made audiences forget about any perceived lack of height or muscle by wowing them with his jaw-dropping arsenal of aerial moves. Rey decided to bust out one of his very best ever when he defended the WCW Cruiserweight title against Super Calo at Fall Brawl 96. The two luchadors had their customarily good match when, after about 15 minutes of back-and-forth action, Mysterio went for the most creative of finishes. Standing between the two rings, which were there due to the War Games main event, Rey did a springboard backflip into the ring behind him. Then he did a double springboard, hopping from one ring to the other and hitting his opponent with a picture-perfect Hurricane Rana for the 3. You absolutely audacious little bastard. A hell of a way to retain a title, as well as an ingenious way to utilize the extra ring. It was moments like this that put Rey Mysterio Jr. in a class of his own. Number 9, Mr. Jericho goes to Washington. Fed up with being seen as a lowly mid-carder and nothing more, Chris Jericho spent the final 18 months of his WCW tenure doing everything he could to get himself over in a bid to position himself higher on the pecking order. After Dean Malenko shocked Jericho by revealing himself as the masked Cyclope and beating him to bag the WCW Cruiserweight title at Slamboree 1998 in what is widely regarded as one of the best WCW moments ever, Jericho made it his mission to prove to J.J. Dillon that he was the victim of a conspiracy. This led to the Canadian to visit Washington D.C. to find proof of this alleged conspiracy. While in the nation's capital, a suit-wearing Jericho was shown being turned away from the Capitol building and the gates of the White House as he settled for protesting on the streets, venting to randos, and ultimately digging through books in the Library of Congress. These were highly entertaining segments that also pushed the Malenko feud strong and built anticipation for their eventual match. Number 8, Saturn frees the flock. After continually butting heads with Raven, Perry Saturn turned babyface and left Raven's stable of misfits known as the Flock. Not content with simply emancipating himself, Big Pez challenged the Flock's leader to a match at Fall Brawl 1998, with the stipulation that if Saturn won, the Flock would have to disband. However, if Raven won, and the match would be fought under Raven's rules no less, then Saturn would have to become his slave. Oh, kinky. Anyway, the match itself was a banger and easily the best thing on what was a pretty wretched pay-per-view overall. It built and built brilliantly until the moment that Saturn, after fending off a ton of interference, was able to counter the DDT and hit a Death Valley driver to gain revenge on his former tormentor and free the rest of the flock. Go Van Hammer, go and be the best Van Hammer you can be. The fans were well into it as well and were clearly invested in Saturn's cause. Perry, for his part, later called it his favourite moment of his career. Really? More than the time you were in love with a mop? Number 7, Hogan vs. Sting. When WCW was at its hottest, the promotion managed to masterfully build up a match between Sting and Hollywood Hulk Hogan for a full year, all with the Stinger not wrestling a single bout and spending much of his time sulking in the rafters. Of course, the eventual match, specifically the match's controversial ending, turned out to be one of the most bungled in history, but hey. It's worth remembering though that the Starrcade 1997 debacle was in fact the second time the two industry icons had locked horns. The first time was over 2 years prior in the main event of the November 20th, 1995 episode of Monday Nitro. This was a massive match whatever way you look at it, as WWE's former All-American hero clashed with his blonde-haired counterpart from the competition. It also happened during a storyline where the Hulkster had momentarily turned to the dark side, meaning he worked more like a heel and wore a black outfit similar to the one that would become his trademark as leader of the New World Order. The action itself certainly won't blow you small way, perhaps Hogan was hampered by working in friggin' maroon cowboy boots, but it was still a major moment that doesn't get talked about a lot. Number 6, Meng on a mission. Look, everyone and their mother knows that Meng, aka Haku, is the toughest professional wrestler, nay, human being, to ever walk the face of the earth. Tales of the Tongans outside the ring exploits are legendary, and those who witnessed his fighting prowess firsthand all agree that nobody else even comes close. However, this dominance wasn't always reflected on screen. On the August 10th, 1998 episode of WCW Nitro, fans got a reminder of just how much of a monster Meng really was as WCW tried to heat him up for a world title showdown with Goldberg in the show's main event. After the first bout of the evening, which saw Meng's former Faces of Fear tag partner Barbarian clash with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the big man ran out and destroyed not just the two men in the match, but also Hugh Morris, Jimmy Hart, Doug Dillinger, and 2 security guards. A little while later, Meng was shown applying the Tongan death grip to 2 more security guards backstage. The eventual match with Goldberg was brisk, but WCW had done such a good job of building up Meng and his signature hold that fans genuinely thought the champ was in trouble of losing his belt before he found a way to extend his undefeated streak. Number 5, To Catch a Thief. 6 months after surviving a near-fatal car crash, Eddie Guerrero returned to WCW and got back to doing what he did best, annoying his fellow luchadors. It wasn't enough for Eddie to pick up victories over Juventud Guerrera, Psychosis, and La Parka. He had to find a way to mess with them even more. On the July 5th, 1999 episode of Nitro, Guerrero was shown complaining that someone in the Mexican dressing room had stolen his wallet. After Doug Dillinger had rounded them up for a lineup, Eddie explained that the suspects needed to unmask in order for him to properly identify the culprits. Guerrero's facial expressions and reactions were priceless as each masked wrestler proceeded to show their face. Between asking Cyclope whether he was ever in a fire and outing the Cheetah Kid as Prince Iakea, Eddie was a riot and turned what could have been an unmemorable throwaway segment into something genuinely funny. Obviously, the theft was simply a ruse by Eddie designed to humiliate the luchadors, making the wind-up that much funnier. Number 4, DDP turns down the NWO. The New World Order went from strength to strength in their first 6 months of existence, routinely battering Team WCW as their numbers swelled to include the likes of The Giant, Six, Buff Bagwell, and, Vincent. So it was entirely plausible that Diamond Dallas Page might take the NWO up on their invite when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall sauntered down to the ring following DDP's victory on the January 13th, 97 episode of Nitro. Some fans would have also known that the three were tight, dating back to their days in the Diamond Mine earlier in the decade. But what the outsiders didn't know was that Page was WCW through and through. While he at first put the black and white t-shirt on, DDP quickly showed his true colors by suckering the bad guy in for a diamond cutter before sending Big Sexy sailing over the top rope. Finally, somebody had gotten one over on the Order, giving WCW fans a moment to remember and Dallas yet more momentum as he continued his rise to the top. Number 3, the Mega Powers reunite. The signing of Hulk Hogan was a game changer for WCW, helping to change the promotion's perception as a southern wrestling company to a viable national enterprise. Terry Bollea's signing also encouraged other ex-WWE stars to hop aboard the Turner train, including his longtime frenemy Randy Savage. Though the two men may have been at odds behind the scenes, Macho Man and the Hulkster were all business in front of the camera and knew that the two of them teaming together was money. As great as it was seeing the Mega Powers, who were initially dubbed the Monster Maniacs for legal reasons, tag once more, it felt as though something was missing. That missing something reappeared at the 30-second Clash of the Champions special, when the lovely Miss Elizabeth made her WCW debut to walk Hogan and Savage down the aisle for their main event outing with the Giant and Ric Flair. It had been almost 7 years since fans had seen the three of them on the same page, and it was certainly nice to see Liz get the spotlight that she deserved. And number 2, a death-defying debut. Eric Bischoff and the boys really did do everything they could to make Nitro seem like can't-miss TV from the off. Whether it was matches featuring exciting international stars like Jushin Liger or surprises like ex-Federation star Lex Luger jumping ship, WCW's new Monday night show had an air of unpredictability about it right away. The appearance of ECW standout Sabu kicking off the second ever episode only reinforced this notion. A week after a vignette hyping his debut, the battle-scarred brawler took on Alex Wright in a match that showcased his daredevil style. Sabu's style was revolutionary for the time, and he got over big by hitting springboard moves, dives, and other exciting offense in his own endearingly haphazard way. The man from Bombay, Michigan added an exclamation point to proceedings by putting the dancing German through a table afterwards, something that just wasn't seen in mainstream American wrestling at the time. Sadly, the relationship between Sabu and WCW didn't work out, but he was electric for the brief time he was there and set the tone for his short run nicely during his televised debut match. Number 1, the Dragon returns. Sometimes timing really is everything. On October 21st, 1991, Ricky Steamboat, fed up with being a fire-breathing preliminary wrestler in a daft costume, gave notice that he was leaving WWE, who promptly fired him instead. On November 19th, 1991, WCW held their 17th Clash of the Champions special, with one of the key matches set to see Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham challenge the Enforcers, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, for the World Tag Team titles. Unfortunately, Windham injured his hand in the weeks before and had to withdraw, but who could possibly step into such a high-pressure situation at such short notice? Cometh the hour, cometh the dragon. After attempting to create a little bit of suspense with a dragon mask and robe to disguise him, it was quickly revealed that the new partner was indeed the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ricky Steamboat. The fans popped huge for the surprise, while Anderson and Zbyszko sold it beautifully. Even better, the four men proceeded to have an absolute belter of a match, with Steamboat scoring the pin to bag the belts. I mean, it wasn't as good as wrestling Skinner on house shows or anything like that, but it must have felt like vindication for the Steamer.